Have you ever noticed how senior devs seem to just leave right at 5 p.m., but yet they ship twice as much code as everyone else? Let's go ahead and take a look at my GitHub graph. Just consistent contributions, day after day, no spikes on the weekend. But this didn't happen overnight. It took years of late night debugging sessions and weekend catch-ups. And finally, I figured out the senior dev secret. They're not working harder, they're working differently. So if you're still coding past midnight, catching up on the weekends, and feeling perpetually behind, you're doing it wrong. And I know this because I used to be that dev. But then I learned how the elite devs actually work, and it changed everything. So 5 years ago, I was a junior developer. Now, I'm a principal engineer. In this video, I will tell you exactly the shift in mindset that I was missing back then. And then I'll share with you 3 specific things that made a huge difference for me. Things I wish someone had told me back when I was in that position. But before I tell you what that mind shift is, let me tell you a story that illustrates how I got there. 5 years ago, I was that junior dev. You know the one, living on pots of coffee, debugging until midnight, but yet somehow still always behind. My code quality was suffering. My PRs were getting nitpicked to death. And my personal life, let's not even go there. I was constantly pushing the boundaries of coding marathons, spending hours upon hours on a single problem, refusing to give up and walk away until I had a solution. It wasn't until one late night, I had been fussing with a bug all afternoon. It was one of those pesky race condition bugs. At my wit's end, I figured, why not try something different? So I got up and I took a little walk around the block. Halfway through, the solution just clicked. So I raced home, raced home, race condition, to verify it would work. Boom, gangbusters, immediate fix. My point is, what most devs don't understand about productivity, your brain isn't scientifically designed for coding marathons. Studies show that mental performance drops by 75% after just 4 hours of continuous deep work. But here's where it gets really interesting. Elite developers aren't immune to mental fatigue. They've just mastered the art of working with their brain's natural rhythms instead of against them. That realization and shift in mindset changed everything for me. But here's the thing, knowing this wasn't enough on its own. What really made the difference? 3 strategies that work together. Each one makes the next one more effective. So let me show you how I use them. And this first one is one of my absolute favorite strategies, and it honestly changed my life forever. I call this the power of deep focus. Now, if you're like what I used to be, your workspace probably looks something like this. 12 Chrome tabs, 4 chat apps, and 3 different code bases, and enough notifications to make your phone melt. But here's what I learned from watching senior developers. They're almost obsessive about focus. One task, one code base, one problem at a time. Now, here's the exact protocol I use today. I close all unrelated tabs and projects. I turn on Do Not Disturb on my phone, and I use a dedicated focus timer. I block out distracting websites during focus periods. And what I do is I keep a separate browser profile just for research. After implementing this protocol, my average debugging session went from 3 hours to 45 minutes. But why? Because context switching is the silent killer of developer productivity. Every time you switch a task, there's a mental overhead. Studies show it can take up to 23 minutes to fully regain focus after a distraction. Multiply that by the average number of times a developer gets interrupted in a day, and you are losing hours of productive time per day. Which brings me to strategy number 2, and I call this one success streaks. When we get a new project, most of us tend to try and just tackle the whole thing all at once, sometimes even in one single PR. Guilty. But instead, eat the elephant. This idea looks at the large project, but instead of trying to devour the whole project at once, you need to break it up into single digestible bites. Most senior devs will take this approach and implement it like so. They will break everything down into 30 to 45 increment challenges. Think of it like a video game. You're not trying to beat the final boss immediately, you're leveling up through smaller battles. Now let's see this in a real example. Let's say we're building a new authentication system, and instead of just implement the auth system in one giant massive task, we need to break this down. First 30-minute sprint, set up a basic route structure. Next sprint, implement password hashing. Third sprint, add JWT token generation. And then fourth sprint, set up the middleware. Before you know it, instead of wasting time getting lost in some big complex sauce, your project is organized and executed efficiently. Which leads me to the last strategy, one I feel is most important. I call this small wins. Remember that feeling when your tests finally pass after hours of debugging? Or when your PR gets that "looks good to me" comment? That's not satisfaction, that is dopamine, your brain's reward chemical, and we're going to use it strategically. Here's how senior devs harness this. Instead of just waiting for big wins, they engineer small victories throughout their day. Let me show you what I mean. Start with a small bug fix first thing in the morning. Break feature work into micro commits and set up automated tests for quick feedback. And celebrate PR approvals. Yes, actually celebrate them. This all might seem extremely silly, but the constant stream of small wins will create a psychological momentum that will carry you through your entire day. Your brain will literally get addicted to shipping good code. And remember, productivity isn't about working longer, it's about working smarter. Senior devs have figured out how to turn coding into a game of strategic sprints rather than an exhausting marathon. If you implement just one thing from this video, make it the success streak system. Start tomorrow. Break one task into a 30-minute challenge and take actual breaks and watch how your productivity transforms. Drop a comment below with your biggest productivity challenge, and I read and respond to every comment. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more developer productivity tips. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one.